Thank you.
Okay, let's start. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to start the 7th webinar of Let's Talk OD. It's all about our workplace. Today's webinar is about leadership and people, and the guest speaker is Gil Zimmermann. Please write your question or comments if you have after. Gil is a parallel entrepreneur and one of the founding partners of FXP, a Boston and Israel-based venture studio that partners with exceptional co-founders to build transformational companies. Gil is married with 3 kids, lives in Boston, and loves to travel. Let's start, Gil.
Hi, Nili. Thanks for hosting me. Appreciate it.
I didn't introduce myself, so I will just add this. I am Nili Bulis, and I'm organizational development and leadership development consultant, passionate about understanding people, organization, and the processes between them. Leaders are craving the organization of in their image. Sometimes they are not fully aware of some of the issues they are naturally pushing in their organization. For example, if they are a good communicator, that might be the organization standard. I, as an organizational development consultant, need to learn best practices from leaders who succeeded in establishing an organization, and better if more than once. So Gil, to you that build it more than once. What does the word leadership mean to you? What are the 3 to 5 components that are essential for successful leadership?
Excellent. So for me, leadership is, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And it's a journey that I'm still on and still learning. And it starts with setting an example. So leading a path and doing that by example. And the components that are necessary, and then other people will follow. If you're on an interesting path and you can inspire others, and there are others that are interested in following, and you set a good example, others will follow your example. And to me, leadership is about putting together a team of skilled individuals and people that want to better themselves across all different vectors, not necessarily in the specific thing that you're good at. In fact, I think that the exceptional leaders do a really good job in honing other leaders and growing other leaders. And that's what sets them apart from being good managers and good technical leaders of functions. So for me, it's about being virtuous, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and being aggressive but not abrasive, and pushing others to do the same, to follow their path. Hopefully it's on the same path and you're on the same team, you're working towards common goals, but not necessarily on the same skills, not necessarily with the same kind of standard. And if you can do that, then you can get the benefit of other people's strengths that you might not have on your own. And collectively, everyone wins. So to me, leadership is about that. It's about being virtuous and setting the standard for the people that you lead to do the same thing.
It's interesting that you have co-founders with you, and at the same time, the first thing that you pushed is like being a team member. Can you add why this is the most important part?
I think first and foremost, it's like a fundamental. I didn't invent this line, but if you want to go fast, you could go by yourself, and you can do something small and fast by yourself. If you want to go big and you want to go far, you need a team, and you need to understand that you're a member of that team before you're a leader of that team. And I think and there's different people can lead in different aspects at the same time, and you can foster that capability. I don't believe in that there's just one leader in a specific organization. At times you can have different people pushing, in different directions and helping each other out. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings. So there's lulls and highs. And if you can build a strong team where you can rely on your team members and hold them accountable, then you can get the benefit of other leaders in your team much more, and it makes you a better leader. So to me, that's why it's not just the humility aspect, which I think is critical because it lets other people, gives them the space to shine and to grow as well. It's a necessity if you really want to succeed in a much bigger way than you can on your own. That's my personal worldview.
Being a team member, it's also the word trust. I would say it's not a word, it's like a complete term or subject. What's your input about trust, building it? Is it something that you have to maintain it all the time? Is you just have it once and done? How it works with your own team, and probably how it's, you know, paved the way to the other teams in your own organization?
I would say it is the foundation on top of which you can build highly functioning and really successful teams, is that trust. It's not the beginning, and it doesn't come naturally. I used to think that you could just trust people until they lose, you know, your trust because they do something wrong, and you get to give them the benefit of the doubt. But in reality, in a team composition, trust doesn't come naturally. Even if you put a bunch of really talented people together for many, many hours, they don't inherently trust each other. In order to gain trust, you have to work on it. And personally, I've worked with a bunch of different tools. The one that I like the most is Patrick Lencioni's The 5 Dysfunctions exercises related to the pyramid of creating high performance teams. And trust is an exercise, is a foundation that you build through vulnerability at the end of the day. It's the only way that I know to gain trust, is to be vulnerable, is to create a safe space for yourself and for your team members to fail, and to be awkward, and to do things that you're uncomfortable with, and to share your shortcomings and your deficiencies, not in a deconstructive way, but in a constructive way, so that you can work on those things and you can learn from other people on your team, and do the same for them. And when you have that vulnerability and that safe space in a team setting, you can start to build trust. And it's not something that just stays there. You have to continuously work on it. Kind of against trust, there's other forces are working to erode that trust. And there's a kind of another key term in kind of leadership lingo is the ladder of inference. People assume the worst about other people. It's not necessarily the case. And when you have vulnerability and trust, then you can overcome that natural tendency to think other people are undermining you or working against you or working on their own agenda that necessarily conflicts with yours. I don't think people are inherently bad. I think they're inherently good and want good for themselves and for other people. There are a few rotten apples here and there, but through being vulnerable and establishing trust and accountability, you can weed those out and really understand and be selective on the people that you choose to spend your time with.
Right. I want to add transparency. I can hear it's not only to be vulnerable by building trust, but also transparency. Absolutely. And adding context to each of the event or whatever you're on your own journey. It's something that you feel comfortable always to do it, or is it something that came up as an exercise for you to do it?
I think it's a line that you're constantly testing as a leader, which is you need to provide that transparency so people and the context to that transparency. What are we trying to accomplish? How are we trying to accomplish it? But also understanding that people have different vantage points. And so if you can foster transparency, you get the benefit of looking at an object from a bunch of different directions, not just your own, and you can see it more fully and get a better sense of what you're facing. And I believe as a team, transparency is essential to be able to overcome the obstacles that you're facing as a team. You can't really have some people not, understanding what they're working towards, and others, working towards potentially different things. So that transparency is essential, but the context piece helps because some people with unbridled transparency can't handle it. They don't understand, they immediately in their head, like I was talking about earlier, kind of infer a lot of different things. And without that context, you can mislead people and throw people off and get them overly concerned. So for example, whether it's financial obstacles that you're facing, competitive threats to an organization, economic and macroeconomic situations that are going on. I'm a big believer in defaulting and erring on the side of being more transparent than less transparent, because I think that the team needs to have a shared understanding of what the goals are and what the obstacles to those goals are so that they can work together to remove them.
Amazing. Okay, to the next issue. Doing your job is only part of your job. The rest comes down to being seen, heard, and known, none of which is possible without strong relationships. I took this sentence from How to Build a Real Relationship at Work from an article, Harvard Business Review by Norik NG. And I'm still trying, though we spoke on the trust part, I'm trying to crack the DNA for good relationship between people, specifically in workplaces, where there are, on one hand, hierarchy, and on the other hand, it's equality simultaneously in one organization. And I want to ask you if you can describe relationship or getting connected. How essential is it for organization? And I'm referring to colleagues, to employee, to investor, because relationship is all over the organization, inside of it and outside of it.
Yeah, this is my personal life philosophy, and maybe I'll show my age a little bit, but there was this movie, I don't know if you saw it a long time ago, Bruce Willis had this movie called The Sixth Sense.
Oh, long ago, yeah.
Yeah, long ago, where he saw dead people. I'm going to give it away, spoiler alert. He saw dead people. And I see CEOs, I see, CXOs, like the highest potential in individuals. And it's just a temporal shift when you're talking about hierarchy and kind of, seniority in an organization. Those people are no different than you and I, or than an intern or a graduate that just is starting off. They're just early in their career. If they have the right mindset, they're still on their way up, and they're still learning and stretching and kind of, trying to achieve the next thing. They probably still have empathy for the struggle they had when they were in your stage, if you're younger than them or earlier in career than them. So I think it's finding and breaking through that kind of stereotype where other people are better. They're not better. They might, and if you just kind of take that away and treat people as equal, they'll treat you back as equal. And if you're genuinely interested in what it is that they've accomplished, what they're trying to accomplish, what it is that they're working on right now, it makes for a much better relationship and symbiosis between every different kind of level. So I've never had that problem of not being able to interact with very senior leaders, very junior leaders. They're all just CEOs or CXOs in the making, right? If they choose to be the best version of themselves. And I admire that. And I think it's important, in the younger generation and kind of early career people to kind of encourage them, and in the older people to learn and glean from them. One of the things that you enjoy when you are later in your career is you want to be able to share what you've learned, right? So there's something for everybody on that side. I think the relationships are fundamental and crucial. It doesn't matter if they're done over the web or in person. But I do think they need to transcend beyond just the tasks and into kind of personal interests and looking for, what is this person trying to accomplish? What are they working on? And you can suss out those levels of, same thing we talked about earlier in terms of establishing trust. You can suss out the vulnerabilities. What is it that the weakness that they're working on, and where could they possibly help you?
Yes. I want to ask you more about, as a leader, when you were on the head of the organization, how was the design building, the communication channels, what I call email, text, phone calls, like places to socialize? How did you design it in a way to support the relationships that you promote this?
Yeah. So first, I'll start off by saying, being the leader in any organization, it's like, it's the sausage making is never as pretty as it is on a book that's published, on Amazon or in a bookstore. It's a messy process, and I think that no one person holds the keys to kind of what the right approach is, and the knowledge is still, it's there, it's in the team. So for me, it's exercising that transparency, but first and foremost, being super approachable. Everybody in the organization can and should, and you encourage them to come talk to you, and you can go talk to them randomly without having to have a specific agenda or, specific, it's not a quiz. It's just, you want to get to know them so that you can help them become better. And you the same thing, understand what problems the organization is facing, and then encourage people to, and this is one of the things I used to do in every new hire training, and still encourage it in the companies I'm involved in, is to tell people nothing is the way it's supposed to be in our organization. It's just the way it happens to be right now when you came in. And if you choose to, you can change it. We want it to change. It needs to change, and it can improve. And different people have different styles. So there's introverted folks that don't like the kind of get up on stage and talk in front of everybody and prefer asynchronous communications. And so you have those. There's people that want the kind of all hands, let's get up there. For me, kind of having a cadence where there's an opportunity for leaders and any individual contributor or manager in the organization to get up in front of the rest of the team and talk and solicit feedback and share what they're working on. Having that platform is tremendous, and that we've done that live and simultaneously stream it on even before kind of the COVID work online era with distributed teams. It works, and so you always have to be experimenting and adding different flavors. Different things are going to click with different people, and so you need to have kind of an all of the above strategy and just double down on the stuff that's working.
Right. One more question about this subject. Did it happen to be that sometimes you had to put some like borders? Yes, you can approach me anytime, but not after certain hour or something like this, or I'm open to talk about your personal life, but can we do it later on, and how you managed it?
That's a key question. I think it's not just related to kind of the approachability factor. I think about it in broader terms, which is as a human being, not just as a leader, you have to be mindful of what you say yes to, because saying yes is also saying no. So if I say yes to take a meeting, it means no to reading or answering or deep work or meditating or my family or my health or other things. So being conscientious of your time to me is the number one most important thing. And then being wise in terms of how you invest it. So you can say yes, and we're going to limit it to a certain amount of time or a certain length of interaction, and I'm going to schedule it at a time frame that it works for me, especially if you can be, and I'm not the best at this, but mindful of your time and allocate slots of time for specific topics so that you can maintain that balance of the things that matter to you. And so the way to feel comfortable saying yes to things is start by blocking off time for the big rocks in your life bucket of things you need to accomplish. And once those are taken care of, then the free time becomes easy to say yes, to other people, and it doesn't feel like a distraction or interruption. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, very much. I love your answer. It still was like positive about the yes and what's the priority come first. So then how you build the rest of it and still can say yes to everyone. Personal growth is challenging and sensitive since it will be tough to offer and facilitate if the leader or the manager has never experienced it. Personal growth is challenging. Just 1 second. On the other hand, if workplace is supportive of personal development, it raises employee engagement unbelievably. Probably you know it better. What do you think about personal development and how leader should promote it?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most critical elements that a leader can promote in an organization is the individual growth, even before the team growth. And I think that it comes down to, even if an organization is not growing in terms of hiring people, it can, but the people themselves are growing. I used to say this, explicitly. Part of being a CEO and a leader is being the chief repeating officer as well. So there's certain mantras you have to continuously espouse, but one of them for me is personal growth is key. Even if none of us, if we don't hire anybody else, but all of us are working towards improving ourselves, we can do more next quarter than we can this quarter because we've improved, because we worked on our skills, we worked on ourselves. And I think it's important to also talk about what personal growth feels like. It's uncomfortable. And so you have to get used to being uncomfortable, and you have to be comfortable letting others be uncomfortable. That awkwardness, you see it in your kids when you're raising them. They don't want to try something because they're afraid they're going to fail or they're not going to be able to win. And it's the exact opposite is what you want to encourage. You only get good and you only, win when you're willing to fail and willing to look, foolish, or at least in your mind, when you're doing that. And so embracing things like the imposter syndrome, where people feel like someone's going to find out I got this job and I'm totally underqualified, never going to make it. That's common, but everybody feels it, at least the people that work on personal growth, because that's an indicator that you feel uncomfortable and you're out of your comfort zone, and now you're going to learn. And so that's a great, that's a great thing to point out. And so to me, and it's never ending, never ending. And I've done all kinds of things, not just talk about it, promote it, even in terms of bonuses and compensation structure, in terms of time allocation for teams. Everybody in the company should have a personal improvement plan. What are you working on at any point in time? And I'm not talking about, personal life, basket weaving and that kind of stuff, but things that are germane and relevant to your, advancing your career aspirations. And the company should back those up, right? You should be able to expense it. If it's relevant, everybody benefits from it. Why not? And ideally, the company, for me, the leadership, aspiration is to capture lightning in a bottle. Those people that are on their personal growth journey, give them a space for as long as you can so they stay on your team and grow rather than go to the next team. And if you can't keep up, they'll need to grow somewhere else. But I look at it just like, people that are recruited into the NBA, right? Hopefully they can go their whole career and your team will go to the championship, year after year after year. But if you can't create that team atmosphere for them, the rock stars and superstars, they'll move on and they'll go on to some place where they can shine. And that's okay if you can't create that environment for them, but ideally you can. And so to me, personal growth is the be all end all in terms of being able to advance the team. It's hard to do team growth without individuals that are personally growing.
Wow, amazing. I wish every leader would say the same. It sounds like really a good place to work when you build environment that the employee is like really invited to put his schedule, his wants, his needs first, and then to really align his goals with the goals of the organization, as you just said. Amazing. And with this, when we are saying growth, the one thing that linked to it is the feedback. So how should managers integrate individual performance and organizational reflection toward company's goal, and how critical is it? And as you said, it might be painful.
Yeah, I think that the painful piece shouldn't come from the managers unless it's inevitable. You're in a situation where you can't avoid it. But the pain and discomfort that I'm talking about is personal. Right? It's like when you go to the gym and your muscles are sore, when you're, an eighth grader is starting to learn, calculus or algebra. I think I got my calculus too early, but it feels hard, right? That feeling, that's a great feeling, because that maintaining that struggle it's an innate internal discomfort. It's not applied to you. It doesn't help if there's a teacher telling you you're doing a bad job, or if there's somebody telling you you're out of shape. It's your personal growth comes from your willingness to embrace discomfort. And I think it's the manager's job and leader's job is to encourage that and to be supportive and constructive and provide feedback on a continuous basis, openly and ongoing, as opposed to a yearly review or kind of a retrospect, because, and especially in larger organizations, the feedback mechanism that most organizations employ is it's destructive. It's not constructive, and it's misleading, because oftentimes it's tied into organizational requirements rather than individual performance and growth opportunity, because there's a certain allocation of dollars that can be spread across, et cetera, or a certain number of employees that need to be let go or restructured or whatever you want to call it. And I think that has nothing to do with the ongoing kind of path. And like I said, we're humans. So it's not, no one's going to be on 24/7, 365 days a year. There's going to be lulls. So you got to be there to support people and understanding what are they going through personally, not just professionally, and how you can support them through thick and thin. And you also have to understand how, you know, the performance might not fit in your organization. And so if the people are, you know, that work for you are not in that mindset, they want that for me, this is in my life and in kind of the kind type of companies I like to run. There's no place for people that are not on this journey at any level, right? I'm a big believer in the petering effect. And so once you peter out and you've basically risen to your highest level of incompetence, which means the organization will be incompetent in your area, and we can't, you know, that's not fair to those people that are on their journey to improve. So it's really, you know, I know that wasn't the question, but somehow
yes, that's exactly what the question.
I brought it over.
You nailed it. So I want to ask about, you mentioned open feedback.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. The open feedback. So usually I am a big supporter of two kinds of feedback. One is the ongoing one that you can immediately give, like a small things that help people to tune up to the goals of the organization, and one that is periodically, quarterly, or I don't know, whatever the organization is feel good with, and it is more toward reflection of what's really working, like they give the space about really thinking about all the performance in all levels. So when you're saying open communication, open feedback, what do you mean by that?
I mean that, so I have this like life saying, which is, if you want to be happy, you know, lower your expectations, right? But that's not a recipe for success. If you want to be successful, you got to raise your expectations, which if you follow kind of the regular logic would mean you're not going to be happy, right? So it's really this balancing act of constantly setting expectations and balancing them out with something that's attainable and understanding if you're on the path to meeting those expectations. And I think that performance and the objectiveness of performance reviews is directly related to the ability to continuously articulate and refine and explicitly state expectations. Because if you and I don't set expectations and I do something, I might think in my head, wow, this is the best thing ever. And you might have had a completely different expectation, say this was a disaster, right? And we're both right, because we didn't set expectations. And even if we did set expectations, we got to write them down, because we're busy people. We got a bunch of different other things that we're doing, and we got to revisit those expectations during the period, not just at the end of the period, because things happen, because life happens. So during the period, we might say, you know what, we abandoned that objective or this expectation because we decided to do something else. So it's a mutual responsibility, first and foremost, in my mind, and the individual that, you know, wants to be successful and wants to and agrees to kind of being measured, is to understand what we're being measured on. And so they own that. But as managers, if you can encourage and teach people how to do that, is to set those expectations up and down the chain, then the organization has a really good chance of meeting those expectations. And if they're aggressive and they set aggressive expectations, they can be both successful and happy.
Yeah. So your answer actually leading me to all changes in organization. So I wanted to ask, while changes in company are a reality, could you describe the guideline you used strategically as a leader to reduce employee resistance? So you started by saying set expectation, which is great, but still sometimes, you know, there is like other, I would say, it's not the formal talk that some employee are doing, but behind the back, you know, like, oh, why did we change this? Like, why do we need this? Though you gave the explanation and though it makes sense, but, and it could happen from very different reasons, that the resistance is still there.
Yeah, I'll probably lean back on my philosophical kind of worldview, which is companies are change by definition. When a new company is born, it didn't exist before. Everything, nature is working to restore the balance and to restore it back to the way it was, which means that to get rid of that company that was just born, right? So the company in and of itself is meant to change. It's meant to deliver something new to an audience that didn't exist before, better, faster, more creative. It doesn't really matter, but in its essence is change. It's creating something new that's going to deliver value to customers, to shareholders, And so embracing change in my mind starts at the very beginning, which is we're here to change the status quo, period. That's why we started this, whether it's a bakery or a startup or, a rocket ship company. It's meant to change, and that permeates throughout, and it needs to be consistent. And I think that organizations can continuously, you can just set your high level objectives, but not be blinded by them, and go after them because you said you would. You're going after them because you believed that those are the right objectives, and you constantly need to refine those beliefs and adjust them based on the realities that you're facing. So you might change your objectives a little bit or a lot and pivot, but the how you get there, that needs to change by definition all the time. You're never done. There's always a better way. There's more friction that can be removed from the processes you have in place. And human nature is a little bit averse to change, but in reality, when you look around you, everything that you see is a direct result of people that decided to change something. Whether it's the Zoom interface that we're working on now, the internet, the desk that my iPad is sitting on, even our social and community and government constructs are thoughts that changed reality. And I think it's a very, very powerful tool that most people just take for granted. They just think it needs to be the way it always was. We'd still be living, right? So I think change is fantastic. It's okay to embrace it and talk about it. And I mentioned it that I talk about it at new hire training when I get the chance to do that, and I used to do that all the time. But to talk about it all the time, which is you celebrate the change, and even sometimes it fails, and that's okay. Right, because it gives you the opportunity to learn and try something else.
Right. I will push you a bit more about resilience if someone do not, align with the goals or somehow offer a new way. And how do you deal with this kind of things?
I mentioned the chief repeating officer thing. So I think it's important to continuously repeat that, celebrate the examples where change is celebrated and it has an impact. Change for the sake of change isn't good, right? But change that works and aligns with the common goals, it makes you more efficient, it advances your objectives, creates a better atmosphere. Those things need to be celebrated. And people want that attention. They want to be part of something successful. People, as much as they're averse to change, they're more attracted to success and to kind of advancement than they are to being stuck in their ways. Most people. But every once in a while, I think at the end of the day, you have to come to a realization that, your time is very scarce. And if you are on this path to continuously grow and you have aggressive, aspirations, you can't work with everybody, and not all the humans are cut from the same cloth. And there are some things you can't change about people because they don't want to change. And so at some point you need to come to that realization and either work them out of the organization, part ways amicably, ideally, but move on. Really, at the end of the day, it's like I was talking about the NBA. There's players that don't stay on the team, right? Because they're not keeping up with the plays and with the progress that the rest of the players are, and that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. I want to ask you about a few trendy terms that coming up now a lot in the internet and talked in a lot of places, like the quiet quitting, which for me it says it is a management problem. Though I try to do some review in the history, and it seems like in a lot of other professionals, there always have been some percentage that lived like this forever. So it's somehow become more centered. I don't know, maybe we are more aware, and maybe the percentage is bigger of quiet quitting. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I'm going to risk coming across as, I'll call myself legacy rather than just old. But I agree with you that I think that not fundamentally, there's no kind of major change. People have been, they've called it different things, phoning it in, small-headed kind of pinhead type approach. People have been cruising for forever since the dawn of time. right? Bureaucracy has been kind of the gift of human nature to those that don't really want to, work hard, grow, get out of their comfort zone, etc. I think that quiet quitting is an offshoot, or kind of at least from what I've read, an extension of the Great Resignation and kind of the shift and the awakening that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, where people came to the realization that work can be done and achieved differently, and that work-life balance, reminder was critical to really focus in on the things that are important to you, the people that you love, paying attention to your health and your family, and taking care of your neighbors and your community. I think those are all really, really good things, and they cut out a lot of the bullshit. You can edit that one out later. That organizations had. You really don't need to fly out 50 people or have them, a 19-person meeting to get something done. You can be much more efficient. There are some challenges that came with that. So I think a lot of people resign for the right reasons. I think quiet quitting is a horrible thing. When I talk to young adults or people early in their career, it's a cop-out. It's giving up, right? And I don't think it's a managerial problem. I think it's an individual problem. Like the worst thing you can do to yourself is inflict self-harm, right? If you need help, there's people out there that are experts in guiding you and mentoring you, and a lot of people are willing to help and lend a hand. Quiet quitting is basically giving up and saying, I'm just going to cruise and I'm going to give up on myself more than the job. It's not about them. Like, you don't like where you're at, leave. There are plenty of opportunities. Good talent and amazing people are really hard to find. Always has been, always will be. And to me, it's like giving up on yourself and deciding, what, I don't like the management at the gym, so I'm just going to go to Dunkin' Donuts every day instead of go work out. The only person that's suffering from that is you. Dunkin' Donuts might be happy about it, but the gym doesn't care. Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Last thought about your prediction, and I know not everyone is a good predictor, but probably in the market that you are, where lately all the organization actually were redesigned, all the map organizational are changed, and it's become more profitable quickly rather than put the stress on how it grows. What do you think the future brings to us from the stage that we are now here?
In terms of profitability, in terms of like how organizations build themselves?
I think about how the organization building themselves, the layoff, about how people future in those high-tech startup companies. Mainly this.
Yeah, I think the fundamentals haven't changed. The noise ratio has gone down, like the volume's gone down, so you can't hide in companies that are very noisy or markets that are very noisy for no real reason. But at the end of the day, if you are involved, if you're an individual that's making a difference in a company that's providing real value, solving a real problem for a real addressable market, you're going to be employed and you're going to be growing. And even in downturn economies, huge, massive shifts have happened and big companies have grown out of them. The biggest companies around today were born out of major catastrophes and downturns in the markets. In previous downturns, there will be a new wave of behemoths that will grow. Some of the existing ones might be those players, but there also will be new ones. And I think it's about your individual awareness to say it's not about just like hold on to your job and your chair. It's really understanding. Are you involved in something that's really meaningful and providing value to individuals that need it and will continue to buy it, right? Because certain things are not going to stop. People are going to still eat. They're still going to, need a place to live. They're still going to get dressed and go to work in the morning for the most part. And they're still going to use technology more and more to get things done. And so I think it's about having that macro awareness to really question, am I working for a company that's viable, that's providing value to customers that are going to continue to be around, and it's not just like a nice to have? And then am I making an impact? And am I still focused on my personal growth? And all the rest of the stuff is just noise. It'll go away.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Just before we are about to finish up, if there are more questions from from one of the audience. You can type it, or you can just open the mute and ask it. But if not, I will thank you so much, Gil,
Thank you,
for
Nili.
the time and to hear about your vision. And I wish you much success, you and the other founders that with you. And we will be in touch. Thank you again.
Likewise.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Nili. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.